Shields up, Iron Breakers. Rurikhan here coming at you with another video. Welcome back to Monster Hunter World Iceborne, and today I'm going to be sharing with you all of my endgame Gunlance builds. These builds will cover all shelling types, as well as have a couple of defensive alternatives in case you are struggling with a particularly challenging monster. Having said that, these builds were made with my needs in mind, the way that I personally play the game, which means they might not necessarily adapt to the way that you play the game. I'm not a speedrunner. I'm not looking to get the fastest clear times in the world. I'm just looking to be efficient at the quests that I choose to take on and just shell the crap out of a bunch of monsters. So let's begin. For the very first build, we're going with long shelling because that is what I've been playing the most. This is what I would consider to be my main build out of all of the builds that I'm about to show you here today. Now for the Gunlance, we're going to be going with the Deathlance Valspisa. This is the Valhazak Gunlance, and as far as I'm concerned, this is the best long shelling Gunlance in the game right now. If you want to look for alternatives to this Gunlance, the ones that I would advise you would be potentially the Zora Magdaros Gunlance, the Silver Rathalos Gunlance, or the Ian Garuga Gunlance. But why is this one better than all of those that I just listed? Again, in my opinion, it is because it's got two tier 2 slots for decorations, as well as it supports custom upgrades, which lets you add a little bit more defense into the weapon, as well as it's a rarity 11 weapon, which means you get 6 augmentation slots at this point, which means you might get an additional one in the future, depending on how the Hoarfrost region of the Guiding Lands work, if they add an additional slot or not. There's a lot of upgrade potential for this particular Gunlance. Now, when it comes to augments, the way that I went is a health regen and a slot upgrade, which is why in my particular Gunlance you see an additional tier 1 slot, because I went really slot heavy with this build and I wanted to get as many slots as I possibly could. When it comes to the custom upgrades of the weapon, there's a lot of ways that you can go about it, but to be completely honest, it is not super important for your performance in the long shelling playstyle. The only thing that you should really prioritize whenever you are doing your custom upgrades is if you see a defense option, pick that up so that you put a couple of more defense in your weapon. But other than that, anything else is completely up to you. The way that I went is I went with raw damage and 1% affinity. You guys are like, why do you want 1% affinity? Well, before I had 0%, there was 0% chances that the weapon would crit. Now I have 1%, there's 1% chance that the weapon will crit. It's not 0. But again, it doesn't really matter. You can go for the elemental damage, you can go for the affinity, you can go for the raw damage. It's not important at all. As a matter of fact, you might even consider not custom upgrading it beyond the defense because, like I said, that is the most important. Now, when it comes to decorations that I'm placing in this particular Gunlance, I'm going to be going with a Magazine Jewel and a Destroyer Jewel and a Vitality Jewel. And I know some of you guys are going to have questions. Hopefully, I will explain it when we get to the end of the build, okay? Now, for the helmet, we got the Zora Headgear Alpha with 2 jumping jewels. For the chest, we got the Zora Hide Alpha with Earplug and Steadfast. For the gloves, we're going to go with Silver Soul Braces Beta with a Charger Vitality Jewel and a Charger Jewel. For the waist, we're going to go with the Zora Spine Alpha with a Charger Jewel and a Shield Jewel. For the greaves, we're going to be going with the Silver Soul Greaves with a Steadfast Jewel +4, a Destroyer Jewel, as well as a Vitality Jewel. And then we wrap everything up with an Earplug's Charm because I don't want to be interrupted in my shelling as far as I can possibly avoid it. And then for the mantles, usually I play Rocksteady Temporal, all socketed with maintenance. But if you are facing a monster that you feel like you need a different mantle, feel free to change the mantles around. These are not set in stone. The main reason for having these 2 mantles is for whenever I need to extract ammunition from the monster, I can guarantee that I get it. That is the main purpose of these 2 mantles. Looking at the finalized build, you have Earplugs level 5, Artillery level 5, Slinger Capacity level 5, Stun Resistance level 3, Tremor Resistance level 3, Health Boost level 3, Focus level 3, Part Breaker level 2, Evade Extender level 2, Capacity Boost, Flinch Free, Guard Up, and the following set bonuses: Artillery Secret and Slinger Ammo Secret. And at this point, one of the things that's going to be jumping into your head immediately, at least I would imagine it would, is Rurikhan, what's the deal with Slinger Capacity? Well, Slinger Capacity affects how long your Wyvern Stake Blast stays on target. And having Slinger Capacity Secret gives you a massive buff on the amount of time that your Wyvern Stake Blast stays on target. It's one of the more annoying things that you have to do with a Gunlance is actually having to put that thing in your target, because the animation for placing Worm Stake Blast still takes a long time. To the point where a lot of times you'll hit the initial hit of the Worm Stake Blast, and then the monster will move away before you actually place the Wormstake Blast. It is my genuine opinion that that particular attack should be made faster because, again, it seems that the Monster Hunter team is under the impression that Gunlances are super overpowered when, in my opinion, they are not. There's a lot of weapons that are way more powerful than the Gunlance right now, so having this animation play out a little bit faster would just make it so that the whole thing doesn't feel nearly as frustrating as it feels right now. At least that is one man's opinion. So again, as I was saying, sling capacity so that your Wormstake Blast stays on target for longer, earplugs so that you can continue shelling even if the monster is roaring. And I know you can block the roars, you can dodge roll the roars, you can do all of these things in the roars, but if you continue shelling non-stop, you can also get flinches. You can get the new drool flinches that you get for the Clutch Claw, at which point you can Clutch Claw into the monster to extend that particular animation, get some more ammo out of him, get some more damage. There's a lot of good things about continuously shelling the monster, and earplugs gives you uptime on that. If you don't like earplugs, replace it with an evasion jewel or whatever the hell else you want. But personally, I love the earplugs, and that's the way that I've been the most efficient with this particular build. Why stun resistance? Because I get hit a lot. If you don't get hit a lot, get rid of stun resistance, get something else, okay? You can replace, I was going to say the gloves, but actually I don't even have stun resistance in the gloves. You can replace those decals with anything else that you want if you feel that you don't want the stun resistance. Why tremor resistance? It's built into the Zora pieces. Health boost 3, in my opinion, you should always be running health boost 3 in master rank. I know that some people have this belief that, like, I'm so good, I don't need health boost 3. Okay, then count your carts after you go fight some tougher monsters. Focus level 3 because it makes you charge your shells faster. It's pretty much a no-brainer. Part breaker level 2 because the more parts you break, the more flinches you get, the more openings you get to shell. I do believe that part breaker works. I've been testing this out, part breaker, stamina thief, and a bunch of different things, testing out which work in the Gunlance. I'm pretty sure part breaker does work. Evade extender because it just makes you move faster. If I was able to squeeze in 3, I would probably squeeze in 3. Capacity boost, pretty much self-explanatory. Guard up. The main reason I run guard up is because right now there's a lot of attacks that you can't just block with regular blocks, and if you run guard up, you will be able to block them. So there's a lot of positions where a lot of times you'll think like, oh, I'm going to sheath to do a Superman dive, and by the time you're done sheathing, you're dead. So I'd rather just block everything and not have to worry about it. Now, I did tell you guys that there was going to be a bit of a more defensive option to my previous build, and you can see that particular defensive option right here. The main thing that we are doing is we're getting rid of the Silver Rathalos pieces that give us quite a bit of quality of life, and instead we're adding a couple of Golden Rathian pieces that are going to bring in the Divine Blessing level 5, which will hopefully make you a little bit tankier, which will help you survive particularly challenging encounters that you may be struggling with. But that's pretty much the main difference. Everything else, I try to get the same skills to the best of my ability, and that's it. Now, when it comes to normal shelling, we're going to start things off with the Queen's Panoply as a weapon, because quite simply it is the best normal shelling gunlance in the game right now. It's got the highest raw, it's got good sharpness, it's got a lot of affinity, it's got a lot of poison damage. The only other one that I would consider, in case you for some reason don't want to use the Queen's Panoply, would be Velkhana's gunlance, which has less raw, it has a little bit better sharpness, it doesn't have any affinity, and it has ice element instead of poison, which means you can't really take full benefit of that particular element against every single monster. However, it does have a better slot, but still, I kind of find that Queen's Panoply just completely rules supreme over every other normal shelling gunlance. As a matter of fact, by the time you increase Gold Rathian, they might as well delete the other normal shelling gunlances from your tree because they're not really doing anything there. Anyway, hopefully that explained my point. In terms of augmentations, we're going to be looking at health regen and affinity increase, even though I will be completely honest, I'm not sure if health regen is the best option because it is quite weak, in my opinion, on normal shelling gun lances, but I still like running comfy builds, therefore I do have health regen on there. Another alternative could potentially be more affinity or more attack, depending on what you are looking for. Actually, I would probably go for attack as an alternative to the health regen if you don't want to run health regen, because we're already going to be capping out our affinity, at least pretty close so long as you're hitting a weak spot. When it comes to decorations, we're going to be socketing in a Vitality decoration on the Queen's Panoply. Then for headgear, we have Zora's Headgear Alpha with a Steadfast Jewel and a Jumping Jewel. We have Zora Hide Alpha with a Magazine Jewel and a Vitality Jewel. We have the Acidic Glavenus Braces, which, as I mentioned, are some of the best filling gloves that you can get in the game. They have Jumping Expert Jewel, another Expert Jewel, and another Expert Jewel. And then we have the Zora Spine Alpha with a Shield Jewel and a Tenderizer Jewel. And finally, the Garuga Greaves Beta, which are quite simply the best individual piece of armor in the whole game. Someone was sleeping when they did the budget for this particular item, with an Expert Jewel +4 and 2 Tenderizer Jewels. We wrap everything up with a Razor Sharp Charm, which I know not a lot of people are going to agree with, but bear with me. I'll talk more about it once we go to the final build. And I usually have either a Vitality Mantle or a Relevant Mantle to the encounter. If I'm wearing the Vitality Mantle, I'll put a critical / maintenance jewel in there with another critical jewel so that I can get a little bit more damage while we have the Vitality Mantle up, and a Temporal Mantle with 2 maintenance decos. And its main purpose of the Temporal Mantle is to ensure that you get the ammunition for your gun lance. A lot of times I'll actually run Rocksteady, in which I will also put 2 maintenance jewels, but in this one I tend to change the second mantle around a little bit depending on the situation itself. Now, looking at the final build, you have Critical Eye level 7, Artillery level 5, Stun Resistance level 3, Trem Resistance level 3, Weakness Exploit level 3, Health Boost level 2, Evade Extender level 2, Capacity Boost, Flinch Free, Guard Up, Razor Sharp Spare Shot, and Critical Boost if you happen to have the Vitality Mantle up. Now, you guys might be wondering, okay, so what's the deal with Razor Sharp? I personally don't like running Protective Polish all that much because I don't like the maintenance of having to constantly resharpen my weapon, so I prefer to go with Razor Sharp. I understand that most likely running Protective Polish will net you more damage and will also free up the charm slot, which is particularly important now in Iceborne because you can get some really powerful charms, but at the end of the day, like I said, this is a build around my playstyle, and I don't like when Protective Polish ends and then I look at it and I become obsessed with it, and I don't like it, okay? And I understand that a lot of people are not going to agree with that. Man, you do you. Change the build around to suit your playstyle, put a charm in that you can get the other decos, and then do your Protective Polish with speed sharpening or however else you want to do it. Get the Wet Fish Fin Plus or whatever to get your sharpen up super fast. But personally, I use Razor Sharp Spare Charm, and I understand that, again, a lot of people are not going to like it. That's just the way that it is for me. This particular build has a lot more offensive to it than the Charged Shells build, which is obvious because you're just spamming shells on the previous build, whereas on this one, you're actually expected to do Slam Burst, which also means that this build is much more offensive, and if you get hit, it's going to hurt more, and also that is the reason why we have Stun Resistance here, just like I have on the other one. I just don't like getting stunned. Getting stunned in Master Rank is usually a death sentence. A lot of the times, even with basic monsters, you get stunned once, you're dead. Like 80% of the carts that I've had in Master Rank have been stuns, and I'm just not dealing with it. So if you don't like having stun resistance in your set, you want to go more offensive, you can exchange the Acidic Glavenus Bracers for, what is it, Teostra's Gloves. Teostra's Gloves come in with Weakness Exploit, or you can even get Shade Shvalda if you don't have critical decos, and you can get critical up that way. There's a lot of alternatives that you can get if you do not like the stun resistance, okay? I personally do. This is my build for normal shelling. And finally, for wide shelling, we have a build that I've been tinkering with over the last couple of days, and I should give a shout out to Twitch user Big Boss CQ, because he was the one that gave me the idea to use Guard Up level 5 on a wide shelling build, which is something that I really hadn't considered up until that point. I ended up not really using his build, which had a bunch of critical and critical boost and all of that stuff to really take as much advantage as possible of the poke, and I ended up focusing more on the shelling aspect of it. So that's why it's got Guard 5, but it mostly focuses on the shells. And I know that some of you guys are going to look at it, you're going to be like, what do you mean Guard 5? Why are you using Guard 5 on a gun lance? Because it lets you really be in the monster's face and take advantage of every single opening. The monster attacks you, you don't flinch, you don't even budge when the monster hits you, and then you unload shells. Monster attacks you again, you block, you don't even flinch, you unload shells. That is the point of this particular build. Now, when it comes to weapons, there really is only one alternative, which is the Great Demon Gunlance. I already told you guys how I feel about this particular gunlance. It kind of sucks that it is the only Rajang weapon that is not the top raw of its tier, which I still don't know why that is the case, because even if it was top raw, it would definitely not be overpowered. I don't even think it's that powerful now, but it does provide me with an interesting playstyle after having placed that Guard 5 in there. The sharpness on it sucks, the affinity on it sucks, the thunder element on it sucks, but hey, it's got a tier 4 slot, and naturally, your wide shelling level 6. When it comes to augments, we're going to be going for health regen and affinity increase, but the affinity increase piece is not really mandatory. I keep it there because it keeps my options open for that particular weapon, so I can basically go and do a crit with crit boost build if I want to try it out, without really getting too affected by affinity. But if you want to go more defensive, put 2 health regens in there. The negative crit pokes are really not super important for this particular build, in my opinion. Now, when it comes to the decorations, we're going to be putting an artillery jewel +4 on the gunlance itself. Then we have the Zora headgear alpha with a mind's eye jewel and a shield jewel. I know some of you will be wondering, like, what's the deal with a mind's eye jewel if you're not taking that adventure to poke? I'll explain. Then we have the Pride Mail Beta. We're going to socket it with an Iron Wall Handicraft, as well as 2 Iron Wall Decos, and I know that not everybody has them, but this is a tough build to put together, so I'm sorry. Then we have the Acidic Glavenus Bracers with Handicraft and Vitality. We have a Magazine Jewel and a Steadfast Jewel. Then we have a Zora Spine Alpha with 2 Jumping Jewels and a Zora Spurs Beta with Destroyer Vitality and Destroyer Jewel, and we wrap everything up for Razor Sharp Charm. And I know, again, some of you will be like, but Protective Polish is way better. I know. Again, to me, it's about how I feel when I'm playing a build. Razor Sharp feels better to me. If it doesn't work for you, get some of the, get maybe an Iron Wall charm, and it'll free up your chest piece. You can get like Kushala's chest piece or something for more handicraft, and that will free up a bunch of slots for you straight up. So you don't even have to worry about it. If you don't like Razor Sharp, you'll have plenty of slots to work in your Sharp Jewel as well as your Speed Sharpening. Finally, when it comes to mantles, usually I stick with the regulars Rocksteady and Temporal so that I can go and get my ammunition whenever I need it. Looking at the final build, you have your Artillery level 5, you have your Guard level 5, Stun Resistance level 3, Health Boost level 2, Handicraft level 2, Part Breaker level 2, Evade Extender level 2. The Earplugs level 1 is just a consequence of using the Zora Spurs Beta. The Tremor Resistance also comes from one of the Zora pieces. The Capacity Boost, naturally, a flinch free, it's always good. Mind's Eye Ballistics, Guard up, Razor Sharp Spare Shot, and Tool Specialist on the mantles, and naturally Artillery Secret on your armor. And I know that you guys are going to have questions. One of those is going to be, what's the deal with Mind's Eye Ballistics? That is because the poke is very important for you to position yourself, and nothing is worse than screwing up your positioning by bouncing. And there's a lot of monsters that have parts on which you're going to be bouncing off, particularly with sharpness as bad as the sharpness that you have on this weapon. So therefore you can be bouncing and be, trying to reposition yourself and just have a tougher time doing it, or you can put a Mind's Eye Jewel in there and just keep on always poking and always being able to actually hit your target. This was actually a big deal to me personally, because it really allows me to hone in on the Wormstake Blast, because every time you bounce is just such a complete waste of time. And I know that you can shell, but remember, there's a lot of recoil on this particular weapon. So you shell twice, you're already kind of out of position, and you're going to have to reposition yourself. And you can either, dodge forward, wait for a little bit for the animation to actually end so that you can then proceed with shelling, because remember, after you dodge, he's going to try to do a reload. So that's why you got the Mind's Eye in there, to allow you to reposition at any time with your pokes. It's the main purpose of that particular build. Part Breaker gives you more flinches. The Guard 5 lets you really be in the monster's face at all times. Guard Up lets you block everything. Razor Sharp Spare Shot keeps things sharpened for a little while longer, but ultimately your main damage with this build is going to be the shells. So your best DPS rotation is actually shell, poke, shell, reload, okay? And then you do another poke to reposition. I mean, the pokes basically do as many pokes as you need to position yourself. It's not like the rotation can be pitch perfect every time with this particular Gunlance and at master rank, because the monsters move around a lot. So poke as much as you need to put yourself into a position to land it on the Wormstake, and then just shell, poke, shell, reload, okay? That's the way that I personally do it. Sometimes there's more pokes, sometimes there's less pokes. Sometimes I'll even go poke, shell. You can also do that if you want to kind of maintain the rhythm, maintain the position. It's all about how you feel comfortable. But anyway, these are my Gunlance builds. Let me know what you think in the comment section down below. Again, I understand that a lot of people are going to be quick to bring up Protective Polish. Just remember, I personally don't like using Protective Polish all that much, because I don't like to stop the fight in order to have to sharpen, only to have to lose that sharpen 60 seconds later, or 90 seconds if you actually use Item Prolonger on top of, Speed Sharpener or Wet Fish Fins Plus, which I can't even get in the game because it's a pain in the ass. So in order not to deal with any of that, I just use a razor sharp charm, and it quite simply works like a charm. Thank you all very much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to hit it up with a like. If you didn't enjoy the video, if you didn't like the builds, hit it up with a dislike. It's completely up to you. I appreciate the feedback either way. Leave a comment if you want to, and if you usually enjoy my content, subscribe and hit the bell notification icon so that YouTube will potentially send you a video of mine like every month or so. Stay strong, and may your shields never break.